Now, this episode is going to be interesting. I'm going to tell you where I'm going to go with what I'm going to be doing in Scholesy Talks in the future. Now, Scholesy Talks has always been about me talking about my viewpoint, wrestling-wise, absolutely everything. I think I told you a few weeks back, we are going solely down the wrestling view, the route. And the reason why we're going down the wrestling view route only, because I love wrestling and I have a passion for wrestling. And when you've got a passion for something, I personally believe you should push it forward. But we're going to go for a detour, I think. We're going to stay on the wrestling subject. But I want to talk about Impact more. That's my favourite wrestling promotion. If you didn't know, if you don't know Scholesy, that's his favourite wrestling promotion. I love the action figures. I love the time period of 2007 to 2013. I have stuck with watching Impact Wrestling weekly for years and years and years, not had a break. The only show that I've never had a break from. Now, I sat down with a couple of my friends the other day on the social networks. A couple that sat down. It's weird to say that you sit down with your friends on the social networks when you don't. You're communicating through Messenger. And we were talking about how crazy it is how for a long time people slammed this product. Absolutely hated this product. Never gave this product a time. Just abused it. Says, oh, it's crap because it's on Twitch. It's crap because it's on Challenge. Oh, it's not like how it used to be. It's awful. Hate. No appreciate, no respect at all for what was given to us wrestling fans. Now, I grew up in a time period where WCW was my program. I remember watching it on the Cartoon Network just after the Cartoon Network finished. TNT started, and I used to watch it there. A week later, we never got it on time or anything like that at all. And when WCW went, we were a bit lost as wrestling fans. Yeah, I watched WWE, WWF, whatever you want to call it, but it wasn't for me. It wasn't my program. And when TNA came about, that was my program. That is still my program. That was the program I had a crazy passion for. In particularly, the years 2007 to 2013 were the glory years, were the golden years, were absolutely amazing, incredible, fantastic, beautiful, gorgeous. Kurt Angle, personally, was at the height of his career. Okay, in TNA Impact. And yeah, there was dodgy years as well, don't get me wrong. The dodgy years when we had awful human being Joey Ryan on there with his dick swing and all that sort of disgusting behaviour that he portrayed and did. And now we are coming back round. We are coming back round to a time period where Impact Wrestling, for me, I can honestly say it is the third promotion in wrestling currently. I think it's equal to the two big guns as well. I think it's just slightly different. And this is what Scholesy Talks on a Friday is going to be about. We're going to talk about old Impact TNA. We are going to talk about the good times and the bad times, because there's a lot of us fans have stayed all the way through the good times and the bad times till now. And there's a lot of the old fans that slammed it for years and hated it and are jumping back on. So this is a good time for Impact Wrestling. And I've personally held the viewpoint of that if you enjoy something, if you have a passion for something, jump on it, jump back on it. And I'm not going to lie, it's not going to stop me watching any other promotion. So my two favourite promotions in wrestling currently is Impact Wrestling and NWA. Love them promotions with a passion. I'm probably going to do another podcast eventually, Twitch, YouTube, on NWA separately. Not worked out how I'm going to do that yet, but this is going to be my number one, and this is going to be Impact Wrestling. And what we've got to remember what Impact did for us as well. Impact Wrestling did a lot for the British scene. The British boot camp, I highly enjoyed. We had the Blossom Twins, absolutely awesome tag team. I believe they write children's books now, interestingly enough. Okay, I think that's a class little segue in that sense. I think they watch do children's books. I think they wrote a cookbook as well. I think I came across their cookbook a little while ago. We had Rockstar Spud, known as Drake Maverick, absolute legend in the British scene. Fundamentally, went to Impact Wrestling, was a great kind of It was kind of a general manager, head of talent, sort of like role he had there. He personally, I always think with Rockstar, he was a better manager than he was anything else. But I did love his little run he did with Swoggle, Dylan Pascal, Hornswoggle, some may know him as. But also we had the British Invasion. We had Terry, man. We had Aldis. Or Magnus, whatever you want to call him, and we had the great Doug Williams. Now, this is the bit where I'm going to move into some news. So what I'm planning to do is I'm going to crack some news. Then I'll probably review last night's show, this morning's show, whatever time you've watched it. And I want to talk about Doug Williams, man. I want to talk about Doug Williams. Last week, he wrestled his last ever match. He is a 50-year-old, so he was coming back to the end of his time period in wrestling. He had a beautiful, cracking little run in NWA currently with the sort of reboot of the British Invasion with Nick Aldis. He also had a class little run with Davey Boy Smith Jr. in the Commonwealth Connection. Yeah, that's it. And they held the NWA titles. He's been wrestling bits and bobs around the UK and doing bits and bobs at NWA in the last couple of years. If you don't know who Doug Williams is, you are missing out. You are missing out one of the greatest technical wrestlers ever in British history. If Doug Williams isn't entered into the TNA Impact Hall of Fame or whatever at some point, I'll be surprised and I'll be disappointed, because he's a wrestler that the British scene kind of needed for a long old while, and we had him. He's a great mat wrestler, and he's got good crack as well. He's got good banter. I remember a couple of years ago, or whenever it was, when Colt Cabana in a 1PW event called Colt Cabana and I forgot his mate, what it was called. Were they Team sort of like Stag or something like that? I can't remember what they're called. When they did it, Doug, Nick, Colt Cabana and his pal did this little dance off, and it was good. It was proper good. So we had a good crack as well. But the thing you got to remember about Doug Williams is he's a guy that had titles. He is a guy that had longevity. He actually wrestled what I personally think as all the big gun promotions in wrestling via WWE. So I'm going to give you a list of his titles, and you're going to be amazed what he had. Okay, in that sense. But I personally think the height of his career was TNA Impact. And that's why we are talking about Doug in the bit of the news. But he's retired and it's sad, but here is his title list. He had the NWA Tag Team title with Davey Boy. Great little run. He had a tag team belt with Martin Stone. You might know him from NXT as, I believe his name was Danny Burch, but I know him as Stone. Great British wrestler as well in WXW. He had the Pure Championship, one of the most important belts in wrestling in my perspective, because it holds the pure rules, it holds the classic rules, it holds the mat wrestling rules, and he had that belt, such an important wrestling belt in the industry. In my perspective, Pure Rules fundamentally is one of the most important wrestling elements that goes. In Progress, he had the Atlas Championship. In Pro Noah, Japanese promotion, he had the Tag Team Championship belt with Too Cold Scorpio, bloody legend in that sense. In New Japan, he had the IWGP Tag Championship with Nick Aldis, which is he's currently back at Impact, which is exciting in itself. He had the OVW Heavyweight Championship. He had the ASW, a British promotion, class British promotion that's still going, that's still doing quite a lot of bits and bobs around the UK, where I currently live in Middlesbrough. They do a great 2 or 3 shows a year at Middlesbrough Town Hall. Great event in itself. We always get Dean Allmark and people like that there. Absolute legend. We'll talk about Dean Allmark in a second, actually. And he had the British Championship there, the People's Championship, and the Middleweight Championship. But the most important one, as this now is an Impact podcast on a Friday, is in TNA. He had an amazing 2 runs with Aldis. Amazing 2 runs with Aldis. Okay, in TNA with the British Invasion as Tag Team Championship. He also held the TNA TV Championship once, and he had, I personally think, the most important belt in TNA. He had the X Division belt twice as well, and he was absolutely brilliant as a wrestler. His move, the Chaos Theory, which I'm trying to remember what it was, I believe it's a waist lock into like a front or a back roll into a German suplex. His Chaos Theory was beautiful, and there was not many people that could connect moves how he did. So because he was a mat wrestler, you saw a lot, and British wrestling, British strong style wrestling is very much about wrist locks, elbow locks, bone manipulation, joint manipulation, and he was the god at doing that. He had this craziness of being an incredible tech wrestler. He had an amazing catch wrestling style with this beautiful element of judo, because he was a judo champion from what I understand as well at one point. And Doug Williams is now retired. I'm going to tell everybody now, if any Impact people like Scott D'Amore or flipping Santano or whoever might hear this, please put him in your Hall of Fame, because he, for a British wrestling fan, did so much for everyone in the UK. We had a long time period where after Bulldog died, we didn't really have much representation apart from William Regal, and people like Doug was over in the USA working his arse off in TNA, in Japan, Noah, and Germany, and his career was stupendous, and I personally think he needs to be into the Hall of Fame. He has the talent, the ability. He had the talent and the ability to be great, and he was great, and he proved he was great. Now, I want to give everybody a match, and it's not a TNA match or Impact match that I'm going to talk about, that everybody should go and watch. It's a free match, Wrestle Carnival, great promotion, great UK promotion. He fought Dean Allmark, an absolute British legend, which always confuses me why he's never been picked up by AEW or gone over to the USA and been absolutely humongous, because his talent basis is godlike, and he had this great Pure Rules match with Doug Williams at Wrestle Carnival, and it was great, absolutely great, satisfying to watch, in all fairness, because of the beauty of how everything moved together. So with British wrestling, when you have that whole catch style, mat style, joint manipulation style, when everything is put together, it's like watching a ballet. It is literally like watching a ballet, and that's what Dean Allmark and Doug Williams gave us in that match. But look, Impact, Doug Williams is a guy that needs to be in the Hall of Fame. Okay, moving on with some more news. Moose, man. Moose. Ex-former American football player. Has re-signed. You can see the excitement in my voice. Has re-signed with Impact. And I think this is probably the best signing, re-signing, or whatever Impact's made since being able to keep guys like Kurt Angle on and stuff like that, or AJ Styles. And I'm so happy about this. And I think Moose's viewpoint on this from his Twitter post comes across that, look, I'm going to stay loyal to the people that stay loyal to me, and I respect that, first of all. And I want to tell people, if you haven't ever seen Moose, look at Ring of Honor, great stuff in Ring of Honor, but Impact, he was absolutely great. He was even in Impact in the pants years of 2016 and stuff like that, and he was brilliant. I mean, see, I remember like it was yesterday at, I believe it was Destination X, I might have got this wrong, where he made his debut in 2016, basically walking in as a crazy sort of like heel. He had absolutely godlike moments in the promotion. I remember him teaming up with the North. I remember Rebellion Night 2, walking in and absolutely wrestling like a god. And I remember him defeating people like Homicide, Crazy Steve and Hernandez when he was the unofficial TNA championship. That was a great storyline. In all fairness, we thought that was a fucking genius. My friendship, he was a genius, because what he did was he basically decided he was the TNA champion. He decided he was the TNA champion, went and had loads of scraps for it. But it's great news that he has made a decision to stay with us at Impact, or stay in the product of Impact, because I can see him probably he could have got something at AEW, he could have got something in New Japan Pro, he could have got something in Triple A, he could have got something in sort of like even Probably New Japan or even WWE might have been sniffing around for him, but this guy is a top talent. He's a top talent. He's a talent up there with Heath, Myers, Trinity, Macklin, and it is so exciting that we have been able to keep him. I am so happy for this. Now, another great bit of news, I think, in pro wrestling is, for years and years and years, you kind of had to hunt for Impact in a lot of ways. It did bits on YouTube. It did bits on sort of Twitch. You could get the Impact Plus, but Impact is now back in the UK. It's going to be on Sky. It's going to be in the Zone channel. Okay, and it's really, really good that they are sort of like how they've promoted it. And I love that they've put in the article that Impact's current roster has a diverse talent. It's led by the Impact champion Alex Shelley, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, and Impact legend, definitely going to be a Hall of Famer. Diana Perazzo, one of the best women wrestlers in the business. Bullet Club's Ace Austin and Chris Bay, tag champions. The Coven being Wild and King. Chris Sabian being the Digital champion. And Joe Hendry, one of our own, great Brit, great wrestler. And other stars such as Josh Alexander, Bully Ray, Moose, Brian Myers, Masha Slamovich, Mickey James, and Shaw. And it is so cool. So, if you're a British fan watching this and you have Sky Television, it is DAZN HD Channel 42 on Sky UK, and this is a big deal. This is a big deal for wrestling fans because we have now got easy access to watching Impact Wrestling. Yeah, it had that free sports deal when people are going to crack onto that, but who really knew what free sports was? I mean, in that sense. Also, great news as well. They've started releasing the names who's going to be wrestling on the Aussie tour. Now, the Aussie tour is cool because I believe that them doing the Canadian tour then opened up doors to the Aussie tour. Then they'll open up tours for many tours in the UK. And as being an Impact crazy man, when they're ever in the UK, I was there, and I will always try my best to be there. And it's great because they've announced, I believe, the card for it. So let's have a look at the names they've got. So you have got Motor City Machine Guns versus the Bullet Club. You've got things like Killer Kelly versus Steph DeLanda, which, please listen to my podcast tomorrow with Josh, Don't Call Me a Diva. We're actually going to talk about Steph DeLanda a hell of a lot because she is one of them talents that every promotion needs to jump on, and you will hear more about that tomorrow. Steve Macklin versus Frankie Kazarian. Moose versus the winner of Eddie Edwards versus Joe Hendry for the Digital Plus title. We've got other matches such as Myers and Moose versus Ace Austin and Bay, Bullet Club. Joe Henry versus Eddie Edwards, we just said there. Chris Sabian versus Frankie Kazarian and Robbie Eagles. And I think this is the thing. We're doing these tours. Things are going to get bigger. Things are going to get better. Things are going to get more pushing forward, bigger for the product. And I think it's really super exciting. Really super exciting. So that is the new segment for this week. What we can learn here is Doug Williams, absolute bloody legend, Impact. Put him in the Hall of Bloody Fame, please. Scott D'Amore. Guys, just put him in the bloody Hall of Fame. He's a legend, a legit legend for you guys. And then we can learn from the news this week. Moose is staying with Impact. Yes. And then finally, the tours. The tours lead on to bigger things and better things. As we're seeing currently as wrestling fans, AEW have got Wembley. So I'm assuming that AEW are going to do more shows over here eventually. So that would mean products like Impact will probably do more shows in the UK and Europe soon. And I'll be there. Don't worry about that, mate. I'll sell my soul to be there. And that is why stuff is so exciting currently in wrestling. Now, look, man, this is me introducing how we're doing it. So we'll do Impact news, gossip, stuff like that to start, open up the show, and then we will move on. We will move on for me giving a very quick highlight and rating of the week's show. So we are going to talk about now Impact Wrestling, June 22nd. I got up ridiculously early and watched this on Impact Plus. I do apologise if no one's seen this yet. I think this show, in all honesty, was very good. I think it was very good. Now, I am a sucker for a storyline, and one of my big things is storyline-based wrestling. I love mat wrestling, I love high fly wrestling, but I think if a wrestling show can give you a promo, it can give you a good storyline, give you some segments where they're sitting in the back having a conversation, somebody gets punched in the head. Brilliant stuff. You're hitting everything I love, and I think I've consistently said this, that Impact can do this very, 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 very well. Now, the opening match was a tag match, 3-on-3, and interestingly enough, it was the OVE, which I learned is, I can't say over everything. It's a state of America over everything it stands for, which is Chris, Fulton, and Sammy. Versus Myers and the Good Hands being Hotch and Styler. And do you know what? Loved it. Love the match. I absolutely love the match because Brian Myers, for me, I'm going to start with Brian Myers on this thought process, is a very underrated wrestler. I think with the Major Wrestling Figure podcast and with his other things that he did through his career, he was kind of seen as the guy that came with Matt Cardona in a lot of ways. And I believe Matt Cardona, Brian Myers signed for Impact, was a great signing back in the day. Cardona signed, Cardona's contract ran out, Myers is re-signed. Now, Myers away from Cardona, I'm much more interested in a lot of ways. I think he has the ability to be the best. I think when he opened his press release about re-signing for Impact, he wants to become a heavyweight champion. And there's been a bit of bumping and jumping and dumping and humping, putting him with people, trying to work out. He had that learning tree sort of like storyline. Now it seems like they've settled down a little bit. They've put him alongside Skylar, one of the greats. He is such a talented wrestler. And Hotch, which I've only recently known who he is, in all fairness, he has a great match on Plus from an indie event he did recently. And that group I'm loving. I'm loving that group led by Myers, and I'm really hoping that Myers at some point gets a push for that heavyweight championship because absolutely great wrestler. He isn't Kurt Hawkins, nothing like Kurt Hawkins. He's nothing like his WWE stuff. He is legitimately great on the mic, a very, very talented wrestler, and he has the ability to be an awesome heel. A chicken shit heel, but an awesome heel, and we love chicken shit heels anyway here because my kids are obsessed with MJF. So that's what we love. Versus Fulton, a big bastard, Sammy and Christ. And it actually opens up really nicely. Skyler takes advantage very early. It's quick tag. Fulton comes in and smashes everybody about very quickly. So we are seeing the OVE on top very, 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 very early on. We see this absolutely attractive, gorgeous bulldog by the OVE guys. And then we see this amazing concept of fast tags, quick tags. We see Myers come in very quickly and does this suplex, then into a headlock, and then gets a tag. Skyler comes in and he beats the shite out of Crisp again. And you know what about Skyler? His grip strength is God. His grip strength is godlike. He's like a throwback to the old school wrestling and you know what I mean, that mat wrestling concept. But he's over in the UK quite a lot. So there's a guy that I know that's local to me in Middlesbrough. And he has been on the ASW shows that we were talking about earlier on. He was at one in Whitby a few months back. And again, fast tagging in, Britchie brings in Hotch and then moves on so fast from that. At that point, we see a very, very high forearm, okay, and we see a flatliner. Fulton, we kind of feel like he's taking control, but he's not. Moose comes in and helps Myers gets the pin, and that's the interesting bit. Moose helps Myers gets the pin. We know in the backstage segments, there's a lot of element where Moose and Brian are saying that they can work together well, and so that was just awesome when it came down to it. I think that match for me was very solid, a very solid opener to the wrestling, and does what Impact does best. Tells a story, okay, alright. Fundamentally, the story was about Moose and Brian Myers Okay, all right, and also delivers good wrestling, and all 6 of them wrestlers, high class wrestlers, high quality wrestlers. That's what Impact does. That's what Impact offers us in that sense. Now, it moves on quite quickly, and the good thing about Impact is it is quick moving. It's no pissing about, it's quick moving into a different storyline very quickly. So the storytelling, beautiful. So Frankie Kazarian, one of the TNA gods, and Eddie Edwards, again a TNA god, had this great little storyline thing. So Frankie Kazarian's coming to Impact Wrestling. We know that he wasn't enjoying it in AEW because he wasn't getting what he felt he deserved, and he felt like he could offer far more than just being some old guy in the pro wrestling industry. And he comes in and basically doesn't trust anybody, and that's his attitude. And I don't blame the guy. The guy doesn't trust anybody. He doesn't want to trust anybody. He doesn't want to trust even his brothers in arms that he was trained with, in that sense, because Eddie and Frankie were both trained by Kid Kowalski, and it's kind of amusing because that is what Eddie Edwards goes with. He goes, look man, we're both trained by this guy. Come on, I swear and killer's soul, killer's grave, killer's heart, that I won't do anything wrong here. Okay, and Frankie turns to him and just goes, okay. And Frankie's showing that tiny bit of trust because they were 2 brothers in arms that wrestled together. Beautiful storyline, beautiful acting, and that's how it worked. And then we moved into another segment, quick moving. This is what I am saying, and this is why they can get so much into an hour and a half. Sammy and Swan, man. Sammy and Swan. So Sammy's come out. He's pissed. Sammy's pissed that he's lost this match. He's missed it. Pissed that he's lost this match to cheating as well. And basically, Rick Swan bumps into him, said, I'm sorry I wasn't there again for you, boy, man, blah, 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 blah. Sammy's pissed. Swan makes a promise. We'll see where that goes, because I think that was really, really great. Okay, because that 30 seconds to 45 seconds tells you a lot about story, and that is what I like. If you can tell loads in 30 seconds, it's perfect. So we move into the next match, and it is Dirty Dango, or Fandango, or the dancer from flipping WWE. That's what I knew him as for years. That guy that can dance, that has a little bit of a hip movement. All right, do you know what I mean? In WWE versus Garja. I hope I got his name right, and I'm sorry for that. And this is a story. It's a very short-term story that's worked off a segment from a few weeks back, or last week maybe, I can't quite remember. And basically, Dirty Dango's just come in and he's decided to piss everybody off. He has no friends. He basically tried to take down the authorities of Impact Wrestling and fouled very, very quickly. And he basically interrupts a really, really good interview with one of the interviewers. And Garja, I hope I'm getting the name right. I do apologise if it's wrong, because he's got one of them Impact Diary docs coming up soon. And Dirty Dango's attitude is, why the hell is this happening? Why the hell is this happening? Okay, who's this guy? Who's this guy? And Garja, I really hope I'm getting that right, basically says, you're just a bitter arsehole. Now, Dango walks in. He's getting so much hate. It's absolutely beautiful. When a heel gets that much hate, it's always gorgeous. They're calling him a Divas Reject. And I thought that is something that it's very Impact fan-y in that sense. You can tell a lot of them guys are old schools as well, because they're just taking the piss out of the lad. They've just taken the piss out of the lad, and that is one of the things I super loved. I love about that. The crowd getting involved, and Dango's working that crowd like a god. So Dango comes in, he's doing a lot of punching, works some brilliant slams in there. Garja, his speed is absolutely crazy. He's definitely one to watch. The match, it doesn't last that long because Garja gets on the top, goes down for a spear, misses the spear. Dango does a DDT, okay, and then it's a 1-2-3. But what happens is it's the storyline telling that happens afterwards. We get Santano walk out, and basically he's the authority, he's the general, he's the boss, and he does his thing. Gets that sock in his hand, boom, you're cobra'd, mate. If you watch WWE, you'll know what I'm talking about in that sense. You got cobra'd, son. got cobraed. Next, we move into a segment with the Death Dolls. I love the Death Dolls. Jessica and sort of like and Courtney Rush is absolutely brilliant. They kill wrestling in this way. And I'm not going to go much into it because I've tried to dodge women's wrestling as much as I possibly can because I have a podcast based on women's wrestling. But they are so cheery and happy and buzzy, and I think it works absolutely brilliant. And them two hopefully will push for the tag belts at some point versus the Coven. They had a great match with the Coven a few weeks back, but definitely one to watch. And it kind of ends. There's loads of questions answered by the interviewer, and they go question time, and they're looking for questions, they're looking for answers, they're looking to do this and that. Absolutely brilliant, fast moving, love it. Let's hope if I've got my notes in a correct order because my wee son was in here. So we moved into another segment, I believe. If I've got this wrong, I do apologise. My notes are absolutely everywhere. And this segment was by the absolutely incredible, fabulous Ziggy Dice and Swinger. If you were going to put two guys together, okay, that are going to work, it's got to be Swinger and Ziggy. I mean, they are fabulous, crazy lunatics. And the segment's great because it's super funny. Because I'm sitting there and I'm like, what the fuck's going on? I'm a little bit confused. A little bit odded out what's going on here. And then in about 5 seconds of thinking that, I'm thinking, all right, okay. Ziggy's getting his referee's license, man. He's going to become a referee. Good on him. Change your career. It might need to happen, possibly. But then the referee said, look, man, bang, shaking his hand, bumping his fist and all that, just saying, look, you've been entered into a brotherhood. And Ziggy's like, yeah. He gives him over a shirt. Ziggy pulls out a referee's shirt with pink stripes, gorgeous. I'd probably wear it. Okay, personally. But then the referee pops up and Swinger walks in. And Swinger's like, this is the way. Daddy, I'm going to get my 50 wins. So I believe the storyline for that is 50 wins. I think he's going to get a world championship title shot. And we'll see if that happens. Do you know what I mean? It'll be great if it does happen, in all fairness. I love old Swinger, mate. I love old Swinger. ECW, TNA, bloody legend. Absolute legend. And do you know what I mean? He has the great gumption to have his nipples out every single week as well. Love it. But yeah, let's just see if he gets them wins. Because I want him to get 50 wins. Imagine that match, man. Shelley versus Swinger. Or Shelley versus Aldis, or Shelley whoever. But then we move into a great match, actually. And I've got a hell of a lot of notes on this. So, do you know what I mean? And I can barely read my own writing. So let's see where we go with this. The design. Alan Angels, Dina and Kong, you'll know all three of these wrestlers. I mean, Dina I particularly love. He's interesting because he's actually a motivational speaker outside, and his motivational speaking is super good, and you can see how he puts it into his character. You'll know Angels from Dark Order. You'll know Kong anyway. You'll know him from just looking at him. Versus, and it's a 2-on-2. It's a tag match versus Gresham and Speedball. Gresham, as we all know, if you know Ring of Honor, he's one of the greatest champions in Ring of Honor. One of the greatest mat wrestlers in Ring of Honor. Absolute top talent. And he looks like a goddess. God, not a goddess. He looks like a god. And he's also the husband of Jordan Grace, which we all love Jordan Grace and Impact fans. And Speedball Bailey. No debate. One of the greatest wrestlers currently. Top 20 in the world currently. No debate. His abilities, but is it taekwondo, karate, whatever he does, an amazing mix of pro wrestling, and he seems like a fairly lovely guy as well, and I love that. He just looks like a lovely guy. I've heard him on podcasts and stuff like that. He's got some great stories. But yeah, Angels opens this up very, very quickly with Gresham. Gresham takes control, tag, and there's a very fast tag. Kong comes in and just smashes Bailey to pieces. And we see, as this match moves on, we see that there's a great moment where Bailey is doing a million kicks in one. Bang, 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 does that crazy kick thing he does. Hits a major drop kick. We see an absolutely incredible pop-up armbar, a pop-up cutter into an armbar, and a great teamwork by Bayley and John. And it's really weird because they used to be sort of like enemies or frenemies, whatever you want to see it as, but they worked as a great tag team. And the major disappointment about this is the design's falling apart. It's imploding, man. It's like, it's imploding currently. And this is what happens with cults. so fundamentally. And as we all know, if you are an Impact fan, the design has come out of a storyline called Violent by Design with Eric Young, and Dean has sort of took over as the leadership. And what we see is that Dean is actually fundamentally failing. He's fallen apart as a leader. Angels is kind of working this out in his head. That this Dina chap, he chats shit, mate. He chats shit. Okay, and Dina jumps on the side, and there's a moment where there was a guaranteed win for the design. And what happens at that point is Dina jumps up and he's like, do this. Okay, all right. Alan Angels messes up. Bayley gets the win. And it's one of the things, we are seeing an implosion of the design, and that's always great to see in pro wrestling. Groups don't last forever. If you're a wrestling fan, we all know groups don't last forever. Again, we move into a beautiful segment with our girl Trinity. If you know me, I'm a massive Trinity fan. When Trinity signed for Impact, this is what my words were to my boy Josh from Don't Call Me a Diva was, Trinity is doing what Kurt Angle did in 2006. And she will do, okay? And I'll tell you all so, she will be women's champion. And she will hold that belt for long. Don't know when it's going to happen, but she will do that. Trinity has the ability to be a great. I say great often because I believe that anybody has the ability to be a great. It's if you're given the opportunity and you're willing to work hard. And she is. The thing about it is next week she's going to have like an intergender match with one of Shaw's laggies, and that'll be a fun match to watch. But again, I'm not going to push into women's wrestling because we will probably talk about this and Don't Call Me a Diva. And we move on. Let me see if I've got this right. Yes, we move on to the British lad, Nick Aldis. I'm a massive Aldis fan. Massive. I always say this to people, that Nick Aldis he's one of these guys is that he has everything you need to be a true champion. And I was a kind of a weird one because I fell in love with him very, very early on, well before his career in TNA, interestingly enough. I actually fell in love with him as Oblivion in UK Gladiators. And then my family, we like two things. We like pro wrestling and we like strongman. And he was a presenter in a strongman TV show. And I loved him in that. I loved his arrogance, his ability to be an arsehole as well. And when he went into the pro wrestling scene, it was going to happen. We saw it was all going to happen. Everybody knew it was going to happen if you were sort of like a guy that went to Butlins on Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Or you're from East Anglia in that element. The Aldis sends out a statement where he says in this segment that he gets Jimmy Jacob, again a great wrestler from back in the day. Check him out. Jimmy Jacobs reads this great statement out where he said he's scared to come in basically because of the abuse that he's getting from Shelley's fans and the social media and the threats towards his house. And so Shelley comes in and basically says, well, Aldis is chatting crap. You know this, he's playing with games, blah, blah, he's playing games, blah, 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 blah. And basically Jimmy Jacobs comes across as like a heel presenter sort of like, and says sort of like blah, blah, blah. And then Shelley comes in, boots him. And yeah, we'll see what happens next week. We'll see what happens next week because I think that could be super exciting. In all fairness, the Shelley Aldis thing, I think you've got two great guys. Shelley deserves his title run, in my perspective. He's been waiting for this title run, 20 odd years? I mean, Chris Sabian got his run, and this is Shelley's time, and this is going to be big, and this is going to be great. If you know anything about the Motor City Machine Guns, I'm going to say this, the best tag team in wrestling history. Okay, not currently now because they're fighting in singles titles, but in wrestling history, 100%. There's no debate, no argument about this. I mean, they are definitely up there with the Brainbusters. They're definitely up there with the Freebirds. They're definitely up there with Rock and Roll. They're up there with the Hardys. They're up there with the Young Bucks. They're up there with the with FTR. They would have beaten everybody in their prime. There's no debate about that. My viewpoint. We can argue about that if you want to in the comments. The next match is the Coven it's the Coven match. And basically, that Coven match I am not going to even talk about because I'm going to be talking about it tomorrow. So tune in. Don't call me Diva tomorrow. It's like adverts here. Then it moves into a great moment. Scott D'Amore, man. Scott D'Amore. He makes this absolutely brilliant quotation. At present, he is not the president. He isn't the guy running the show or anything like that. So he makes this physical gesture. And this is what acting, this is what segments are about. This is what promos are about. This physical gesture of taking his headphones off. He's known for wearing his headphones and stuff like that. Takes it off. Takes his jacket off as well. Okay. And he is the ultimate seller of the underdog story. And this is what he's selling against Macklin and Bully for the match that's going to be coming up very, very soon. You got to remember, Scott D'Amore was a pro wrestler, five-time Canadian world champion. He was the team leader of the TNA team, Team Canada, which was a great team. I mean, Reed was awesome in it. D'Amore was awesome in that, and so. And he comes out with a few great quotations, and him and PCO, a great Canadian wrestler, is going to be versus Macklin and Bully. That segment itself is worth just watching for the hour and a half. I think Scott D'Amore is a king at selling a product. And we move into our next match. Is again a match of storytelling. So Joe Hendry. I believe in Joe Hendry. Joe Hendry, mate. I'm a Brit. We love Joe Hendry. The guy has had his time in Impact before. He's had his time in other promotions like Ring of Honor before. Never quite hit the barrier. I kind of feel like he has a Drew Galloway story, a Drew McElmore story. Because he never quite hit the promotions. He never quite hit his ability then. And he came back kind of not new, but he came back with a new persona, a new logic, a new element, and he's coming to Impact Wrestling pretty much given that Digital Media Championship, and it was the right thing to do in my perspective. He's the longest reigning and the best Digital Media Champion. He comes in and he does what he does best. He gets the crowd on his side. He's like one of them crazy, nutty cult leaders. And I think there's a great quote. I actually jotted it down on my phone. See if I can find it on my phone. See if I can find it on my phone. Give me a second. He says something along the lines of this: anybody that's too much probably isn't what they say they are. And that's what Kenny King said. He says this in the things. He comes in, he interrupts comms. He makes that quotation, okay, and makes it very clear that he's going for that Digital Media Championship. He starts a collar and Joe Hendry versus Yaya. He starts a collar and elbow tie-up. Very, very nice. Yaya gets ahead of the game. Joe shows some respect. Then it's a massive suplex. Punches, controls the match very, 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 very nicely. We see a beautiful Joe Hendry classic neck breaker. Again, Yaya gets into control. And then what happens at the end? Hendry gets the 1-2-3. We see Kenny King come in. Kenny King basically over the comms calls Hendry a bully, and maybe he is a bully, but he's a good bully. He's very enjoyable to watch. So we're going to be seeing a big Kenny King storyline long termly, which is very exciting. It is very, 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 very exciting. Now we move to the main event, and this main event is the main concept of the storytelling, fundamentally for Scott D'Amore. So we are going to look at a match. It was the storytelling of Frankie Kazarian and Eddie, and Macklin and Bully Ray, mate. Bully Ray. So Macklin and Bully Ray's storyline is very, 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 very simple. Their storyline is along with. Sorry, I had like a front wedge. I was hurting. Macklin. So, yeah, I do apologise about that. Macklin and Bully storyline is with Scott D'Amore, PCO. Catch up with that, find that out. But we're going to talk particularly about Eddie Edwards and Frankie Kazarian, because I think the storyline is very much about this episode. So at the beginning of the episode, we saw Frankie and Edward Edwards say, look, I don't really want to work with you. I swear on Killer's life that I'm going to do this. Frankie was okay with this. Their logic was, look, I'm going to wrestle with a brother. Okay, a brother that was trained by our master in that sense, our leader, our mentor. And in all fairness, in this match, Frankie and Edwards, they wrestle great. The match starts off with Maplin versus Edwards, and it is a very hard-hitting match because that's Frankie's start. That's not Frankie's. That's Edwards' style. Edwards is very Japan strong-led. Lots of chops, lots of moves in that sense, and then Maplin's sort of like element of how he wrestles is bang, train, run through you, bang, train, run through you, bang, train, run through you, and we see Maplin take control very, very early on. We see Bully Ray be the typical sort of like heel arsehole, SOB as they call him in America, that he is. He shoves quite a lot of cheeky sort of like cheating in, and it's very, very enjoyable. He tags in after doing quite a lot of cheating, sort of like basically putting Frankie Kazarian's legs, smashing his balls off the side. Comes in, and then he smacks his head off the buckle quite a few times and gives him some sort of like punching. Do you know what I mean? That sort of like New York, sort of Yonkers sort of like style of how he does this. Frankie Kazarian again goes down, gets in a jaw lock. Edwards comes in and he starts chopping Maplin. After the tag happens, Maplin like mental. And we see an atomic drop into a Russian atomic drop by Edwards into a Russian leg sweep, and the teamwork at that point was absolutely brilliant. And this is the storyline. We can see these guys are trusting each other. We can see that it's taken a little while. They had to beat down Maplin a little bit, and now they are doing moves together to take this heel tag team down. And this was where it was going to get interesting. Edwards is thrown out of the ring. Bully holds a kind of chair like he's going to smack him. Maplin's sort of like just looking at him like, what you doing, sort of geezer, you know what I mean? The referee's like, what you doing, geezer? But the chair doesn't really go anywhere. But it was more about intimidation, and that's what Bully Ray's character is. I love that story where Bully Ray went to Vince McMahon and said, look, I want to do this character, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be called Bully Ray. It's going to be an intimidating arsehole. They hated it. Who jumped on it? Impact Wrestling. And it was actually where Bully Ray became the better wrestler. Then we see Bully Ray do his typical sort of like element. He went and started chasing around Alyssa Edwards, get just about Eddie's missus, not a valet. She is a wrestler and a very talented wrestler. I'd like to see her far more on the product in that element. And Bully Ray comes back in and he is hitting one second, who is it? Yeah, hitting Edwards relentlessly, ruthlessly, evilly. Then he starts mocking the crowd. We see a cheeky headbutt. We see Maplin and that get back in there. At this point, it's kind of weird because actually the team that are on top are Edwards and Frankie, and they're doing great. They are doing absolutely fantastic. And we see Frankie do a power driver. And then it moves into, he's trying to do his chicken wing, and then Edwards accidentally gets Kazarian. So all this trust they've built up through this match, all this storytelling they've built up through this match is fouled at that point. It's gone. Frankie ain't going to trust you. Like he lost trust with Christopher Daniels, like he lost trust with the Elite, like he lost trust with AEW, like he lost trust with the whole of Impact Wrestling TNA. He has now lost trust with the last guy that he could have possibly trusted. And that's why we finished there. That match was done with, mate. That match was won with. And that storyline ends with Frankie Kazarian and Eddie Edwards not trusting each other. And we'll see where that goes. And that'll be interesting. Now, I went through that quickly because this show's only supposed to be 30 minutes. I'm on 48 minutes. But I think the most important thing from my perspective of Impact Wrestling is storytelling. It's the storytelling. It's the segments, it's the promos, it's everything. They are the full and complete package. And they weren't for a long old while. They weren't. And a lot of fans left. But I stayed. My boy Josh stayed. We watched this product and we loved this product. Had a passion for this product. And we stayed. And this is why I've started this Friday night episode, which is going to be Scholesy Talks Impact Wrestling. We are going to talk about the news. We are going to give pretty much a sort of decent rundown of what happened of the show. And I think I did okay. But the show for me was a solid 4 stars out of 5. Every wrestler in that company shows the ability that they can wrestle. Every wrestler in that company works their fucking arse off. And every wrestler in that company has a passion for this product. But look, people, thank you very much if you have tuned in. This is Scholesy Talks Impact Wrestling every Friday. Tomorrow it is Don't Call Me a Diva with my boy Josh, where we'll be talking again about Impact Wrestling in a special concept. We'll be talking about what is the future for the women's division. So thank you very much for listening. Love you all with a flying passion. All right. And I will talk to you soon.